In the modern world, power does not always announce itself as conquest. It announces itself as necessity, as stability, as security, as counterterror. And this is what makes Chomsky's argument so unsettling, because the question is not whether violence exists. The question is who is allowed to use it, and who is condemned for it. Chapters 7 and 8 of Hegemony and Survival form a single warning. that empire today is not simply territorial rule. It is a system of managerial enforcement, built not only through alliances and institutions, but through selective morality. This is the politics of terrorism, and it leads directly to the survival question. Empire as intervention. Chomsky begins chapter 7 by showing something fundamental. The United States does not understand itself as one state among others. It understands itself as the architect of world order, the guarantor of stability, the enforcer of limits. After World War II, the global system was rebuilt around American power, military alliances, economic institutions, client regimes, intervention doctrines. But Chomsky insists we look beneath the rhetoric, because in internal planning documents, the goals are remarkably consistent: to maintain dominance, to prevent independent development, to ensure that other nations remain within a permissible framework. The threat is not invasion. The threat is independence. This is why Chomsky returns again and again to what he calls the threat of a good example. Because sometimes the most dangerous enemy is not a rival superpower, but a small country that succeeds outside the hegemonic system. A nation that demonstrates another path is possible, another order can exist. That possibility spreads, not through conquest, but through imitation, and so it must be stamped out. Empire, in this sense, is not a conspiracy. It is procedure, doctrine, institutional reflex. Terrorism as moral hierarchy. Chapter 8 takes the argument deeper, because now Chomsky asks, what is terrorism? We are told it is the supreme evil, the attack on innocence, the crime beyond crime. But Chomsky argues something colder. Terrorism is not defined objectively. It is defined politically. Violence is judged not by the act, but by the agent. When enemies kill civilians, it is terror. When we kill civilians, it is collateral damage, mistake, security, stability. This is the moral asymmetry of power. And here Chomsky's point becomes devastating. If we held ourselves to the standards we impose on others, we would have to admit that we too have committed acts of terror. But empire does not permit symmetry. Empire permits exemption. Stability, the language of control. One of the most revealing words in chapter 8 is stability, because stability does not mean peace. It does not mean dignity. It does not mean democracy. In elite doctrine, stability means obedience, a stable investment climate, a predictable client, a population kept within acceptable limits. A dictator can be stabilizing so long as he serves the framework, but a democratic society that insists its resources belong to its own people becomes a threat, and threats to stability are eliminated, often through what is called counterterrorism. Violence justified as order, terror renamed as security. International law enforced downward. Chomsky also treats international law as one of the clearest measures of hierarchy. The law is invoked against enemies, and ignored when it restrains the hegemon. Courts may condemn terror, but their rulings are enforced only downward, against the weak, never upward, against the powerful. International law becomes not a universal standard, but an instrument of legitimacy, a weapon of permission. 9/11 and the permanent emergency. Chomsky uses 9/11 as a case study. The attacks are real, the horror is real. But what follows reveals something structural: how quickly grief becomes doctrine, how quickly justice becomes expansion. Afghanistan is framed as defense, as necessity, as punishment. Yet, operational reality becomes something else. Civilians die, societies collapse, insurgencies gain strength, new recruits emerge. The stated goal is to reduce terror. The predictable result is escalation, fire met with fire, violence generating more violence. And in the modern world, this cycle is no longer merely tragic, it is existential. Never mind the dancing Israelis and false flags, which Chomsky leaves out in this analysis. The survival question. This is why the title matters. Hegemony or survival? Because terrorism today, in an age of nuclear weapons and technological escalation, cannot be treated as an endless cycle. If the root causes are never addressed, if intervention reproduces grievances, if emergency becomes permanent, then the system may not survive its own logic. Empire as counterterror becomes self-perpetuating. Chapter 8 ends as a warning about what empire becomes in the modern age. When violence is answered only with greater violence, a condition of permanent emergency is created, one that never resolves, only expands. And permanent emergency becomes the justification for managerial legitimacy, experts, planners, security states, endless intervention. Empire no longer requires conquest. It operates procedurally. Through raids, sanctions, doctrines, client regimes, and counterterrorism, the root causes are left untouched, because the cycle itself becomes functional. Emergency produces management, management reproduces empire, and empire sustains itself, in the name of stopping the terror it continually generates. This is Chomsky's warning, and this is the survival question. Thank you for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.